Welcome to the Backstage Creative, the podcast that focuses on the people who work behind the scenes of theater. My name is Krista Copper. I'm a musician who's active in the theater world, and I love it. Playing for theater is a blast, and I have so much fun doing it. I really enjoy watching the process of a show being put up, and I enjoy standing in the pit and watching people solve problems and talking to people in the green room about the jobs that they do. And so I decided to start a podcast where I interview people who do those jobs. I think it's so interesting to talk to stage managers and designers and sound engineers and musicians and music directors and to hear how they grow in their jobs, how the skills they need to do their job successfully. And I thought, well, if I think this is interesting, maybe other people will too. And then here we are. I have learned a lot from working on this, and I hope that it can be a beneficial resource for you as well. I've been thinking a lot lately about generosity and how I can be a more generous player. As the bass player, my role is I'm the foundation. I'm the rhythmic foundation along with the drummer, and I'm the tonal foundation that the rest of the band is hopefully listening to and is being influenced by. I like to think of my job is to make other people sound better. My job is to set the groove in such a way that it's hard for people to make mistakes, and to be so solid rhythmically that the dancing and the singing feels easier for the people on stage. And it's been on my mind a lot lately. Like, how can I play in such a way that people's jobs are easier, that it's easier for the drummer to keep time, and it's easier for the saxophonist to play in tune, and it's easier for the dancers to twirl and jump, and it's easier for the singers to stay on pitch and to project the emotion that they want. I think this concept applies to no matter what field we're in. So I encourage you in whatever, even if you're someone listening to this and you're not specifically in theater, like, how can you do whatever job you do in such a way that it makes other people's jobs easier and it makes their life less complicated? Like, how can you serve and how can you be easy to work with, and no matter what the circumstance? I encourage you to look for ways to be more generous in the work that you do, because it has such a profound effect, I think, on the people that you work with, and the quality of production goes out. Today is my conversation with Jess Mckelvey. Jess is a student, as you'll hear, and this was a good conversation. It was short, but sometimes short conversations have just as much quality and goodness to them as long, drawn-out conversations. So here we go. Here's my conversation with Jess Mckelvey. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this. I know you said that you are in school, and this is probably a really busy time for you.
It is a little bit, yeah. We're coming up on finals week. Luckily, my show is already done for the semester, so I don't have to worry about that right now.
What show were you doing?
I was the lead ASM for a show called Big Love by Charles Mee.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah. What do you like about being in ASM?
Being an ASM is probably, I do really love stage managing, but I like being an ASM more. I really like being backstage and having those interactions uh, and being a part of life backstage. I really love that, and getting to do the more hands-on things that ASMs get to do versus being in the booth and calling and things. So that's really fun to me as well. But I really like the interactions that I get to have backstage.
Yeah, because you get to probably deal with everyone, like all of the wardrobers, and
Mm-hmm.
take us through your background, where you're from, how you got into theater, and where you're at now.
Well, I am originally from Birmingham, Alabama. I spent the first 15 years of my life there, and I was a dancer and a singer. I've kind of always been in performing arts. And then I moved to Ohio when I was 15 with my mom. And my school that I moved into had a really amazing theater program. They do 5 shows a year. And they have a range of things that everyone can be a part of, and it's an endless sea of opportunities with that small little program. And I got really invested in it, and I did at least 4 shows all 3 years that I was there. And I didn't stop. I took a year off of school to go to community college so that I could like get a lot of my gen eds out of the way, because I knew that when I came to school, I would be going for stage management, and I am not very good at school, and I wanted the opportunity to give myself a little bit of wiggle room so that I could truly like do well in my major.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I go to Ohio University now for stage management. I'm in a BFA program, and I've been doing a show a semester since I got here. In the summers, I've done internships. I worked for Tantrum Theater in 2018, which is a internship theater that runs out of Ohio University. So I basically got hired by my professors, but I loved the opportunity. And considering I was a freshman going into my BFA program, it was a really good opportunity for me. And this past summer of 2019, I got to work with Summer Repertory Theater out in Santa Rosa, California, as one of their ASMs, which was a really, really fun opportunity. I had never been that far west. It was a really wonderful summer, and now I'm back and I'm back into it.
I love repertory theater. I think it's so. I think the relationships I've built doing repertory theater are some of the strongest I've ever built, because it's so hectic and it's so much work. And it's just like that camaraderie you build with people. It's just nothing like it.
I absolutely agree. There is absolutely nothing like it. It's so much fun to be a part of, and we did. I was a part of 2 shows there for the whole summer, and but the company as a whole does 5 shows every summer, 3 musicals and 2 plays, and it was a whirlwind to be a part of. It was so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So, how did you get from being a dancer and a singer to being a stage manager?
When I got into high school, I joined my theater program there, and I started off doing a lot of actor things and auditioning for roles. And the more I did it, the more I realized that I really didn't want to talk on stage. And I really loved being a part of the musicals, though, because I got to do what I always did. But I really wanted to participate, and so I started doing a lot of backstage work and being a production assistant with them, because we didn't have ASMs really. Their hierarchy is different from the more typical theater setup is. And the PAs do a lot of work that ASMs do in rehearsals at my high school. So I started doing a lot of that, and I really fell in love with it, and I kept going with. And when I started looking at colleges and stuff, my friends asked me if I wanted to do acting, and I said I want to be a PA. And then I got to college and learned that stage management was the proper term, and that and I've just kind of hit the ground running with that.
Mm-hmm. Like a production assistant, how is that job different from like an ASM or a stage manager?
Usually, the difference between between like an ASM and a PA is the PA is not doing. PAs help the ASMs to get their work done. PAs usually do a lot of things like being on book and line notes and things that the ASMs certainly do on days that they're not there. But it helps the stage management train get everything done. Production assistants help out
Mm-hmm.
stage management in any way that they can in most of the hierarchy systems that I've been in and seen.
Nice. I like to talk to people who are in school or just out of school, because I think it's interesting to hear take us through like what are some of the classes that you take when you do a BFA in stage management, and kind of what your course looks like, and some of the requirements that you have.
Absolutely. So I'm a part of a BFA program at a state school. So there's more required for our major than, because it's so specific, there's more required for our major because it's technically specialized.
Mm.
My course load is usually 15 to 18 credit hours every semester. Every stage manager is on a show every semester. We can choose to take the semester off if we want to, but I've done a show every semester that I've been here. We're actually redeveloping our program right now, so it looks a little weird. It looks a little different depending on what year you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because my current professor and advisor, her first year here was my first year here. She just got hired about 3 years ago, so she's redeveloping and redefining our program quite a bit, and it's really awesome to see, because before the stage managers didn't have a lot of their own classes and didn't have a lot of things. It was kind of trial by fire in learning how to be a stage manager. You just kind of got put on a show and you did what you could. But now we have we have two specific stage management classes that everybody takes their sophomore year. Stage management 1, which focuses on being an ASM and what that looks like, and then stage management 2, which they take their second semester, which focuses on more of what an SM does. Once you get into like your third and fourth year, you take seminar. We have like a stage management seminar with our advisor where we look at paperwork and we talk as a group about a lot of things, and we do check-ins, and it's the only time that I get to see all of the other stage managers that are like the upperclassmen stage managers anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And we use that time really efficiently to talk about our shows and what we can be doing better, and what we want to see as a group and things like that. We have to take a directing class with the head of our MFA directing program. We have to take a lot of technical classes like costume construction and cueing and different classes like that to really understand the world around us so that we can better effectively manage it.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Do you have a favorite class that you've taken since you've been in college?
I like a lot of my classes. That's a hard
That's
question.
awesome.
I do. I
That's a
really
good
like.
thing.
Yeah. One of my favorite ones that I've taken, I took a costume constructions class this semester, and it's very, very, very difficult to keep up with that class. It's probably one of, if not the most difficult class I've ever taken. I knew very little about how to construct a costume and how to sew going in, and I feel like I'm in a master class. But it's so rewarding to get a project done and to like do a step properly,
Hmm.
and that that class is very fun for me. I really like to be challenged as a person and as a manager, and to be in a class like that like I don't know very much, but like seeing the reward of like I'm actually doing it is really cool for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was in college, I went as a music education major, and so I had to learn all of the other instruments, and so it felt like, like I was good at my instrument, but then you go to like flute or something, and you're playing like basic, like Mary Had a Little Lamb, and it was so humbling, but also so great too, to be able to think about like music from a different standpoint, from like a woodwind player, or and just to like be back to like a very, very beginner. It was a really good growing experience. So I can relate to you trying to make costumes. How did you choose to Ohio University? Did you look at other colleges, or was that the place that you just knew that you wanted to go?
I looked at a lot of other places. I looked at places like a couple different schools in New York. I looked at a school called University of North Carolina School of the Arts. They're a very specific, very amazing program. I looked at places all over, but I think part of it was that going to school in state is a lot cheaper. It's a lot better for your bank account. It doesn't require nearly as many
Uh-huh.
loans. That was a really big part of it, but it was also just that I had quite a few friends graduate and come here, also who were also from my theater program, who are going to school with me now, and they loved it. I came to visit quite a few times, and they really love it. And we know we're getting a good education here. I just found home here, so I just stayed.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have advice for high school seniors who are interested in backstage career, like stage management? What advice would you give them as they're applying for colleges and trying to choose where to go?
Don't listen to your parents when they tell you you can't have a degree in theater.
Yes.
Do not listen to them. Because yes, we all have like dry spouts sometimes where like it's hard to find work that we can, but really it's just you can't find work that you're passionate about sometimes. And it's
Hmm.
okay to take like a smaller job that's going to be fun for you than some like huge show. Don't write off state schools, don't write off a school just because you don't think that anyone will think that it's impressive that you went there.
Hmm.
If you really apply yourself and learn and really try to do this, you're gonna be fine, and you should go for it.
That's such great advice. There are so many jobs in the theater world, and you
Hmm.
just have to, like, sometimes you just have to be willing to not get paid very much, or commute a long time, or I mean, the skills that we learn being in the arts and being in theater and music and whatnot, like those transfer so well into other jobs too. And so I sometimes, like, arts degrees are looked down upon, and parents who love us are worried about finding a job, and that's understandable. But the skills that you learn doing the things that we do make you better employees and make you better people. And
Hmm. There's something so special about theater, at least for me, in the way that it takes a lot of empathy to be in a rehearsal room
hmm,
and to be. I don't want to speak for any other part of any other job in my field, but for me, like being in a rehearsal room and being a stage manager takes a lot of empathy and kindness.
hmm,
And I've watched people change so much in my time here because that part of you just grows so much being in this industry. At least it does with me and my peers. And I don't think there's anything like that. And if you truly want to be here, you should go for it. Don't let anything stop you.
hmm.
If you love the arts, like you will find a job. If you love what you do, you will be perfectly fine. You will find a job.
Yeah, I think people are attracted to passion, right? So if you're passionate about something, people see that, right? Like, that's a noticeable trait in people, for
Yeah.
sure.
I My professor and advisor always like we end up getting into this conversation not very often, but when we do, she always says the same thing. The reason that artists always date each other is because we always see each other at our best.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's, again, going back to the beginning of our conversation when we talked about repertory theater. Like, you're not in theater, you're not spending a summer working in theater unless you're passionate about it. And so then you get a
Mhm.
bunch of people who are passionate about something, and you put them on a project together. Like, beautiful things are going to happen because of that.
Absolutely wonderful things.
What's one of the biggest lessons that you've learned since starting college?
How to wisely choose my inner circle.
Hmm.
Picking the people that you put closest to you and that you confide in can be really hard because you get to college and you want to make a lot of friends and you want to be a part of like a big group and everything. But especially when you're in a a particular, like my college is very small. We have 214 students in the whole school, And when you're only around that many people all the time, like, it gets harder to find who to trust because it's not as spread out as other things and other people are.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other biggest lessons that I've learned is that you can't have it all in college. You can't have. It's really hard to get the good grades, hang out with your friends, and have a good social life, and take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I choose more to focus on my education and my self care because I have the luxury of being with my friends every day in all my classes and everything. So I get to see them regardless of if we like hang out after classes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but even that is it's really hard to choose to, and it's really hard to do too well because
Mm-hmm.
you're so busy all the time. You have a ton of classwork. People are constantly asking you to do stuff, and especially if you're part of a rehearsal process and you're in the middle of a show. If you're in tech, like, forget about homework.
Yeah.
If you're in tech, forget about it. You're not gonna. When you're in tech, email your teachers and tell them that you're in tech, and tell them that you're not available this week for homework. Most of them are actually pretty cool about it.
Really? That's awesome.
You just email them. You just tell them, I cannot do this week. I am going to be in a theater from like 6 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And I don't get to do anything else in that time except this show. And
Mm-hmm.
most of the time they'll be like, all right, give it to me next week.
What do your self-care routines look like?
They're going to sound strange, probably, because it just feels different. And I didn't think that these things were self care until I got to college. But taking a shower regularly, making sure making sure I have moisturizer, making sure I have sunscreen because I have tattoos, getting tattoos and things that I treat myself to every once in a while, not blaming myself when I eat fast food, not like feeling bad about that.
Mm-hmm.
Eating regularly is a really big one. Making sure I always have water on me. That's really a lot of my self-care is just it's all really basic stuff that you never think is going to be a part of that routine, but it really is.
Mm-hmm.
College is hard, and you have to keeping up with yourself can get really, really hard, and I've watched a lot of people fail hard.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at like a survey comparing hours of work across the campus and across majors, and theater was on par with nursing
Hmm.
in terms of hours and the amount of work that we do. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds totally insane from the outside, but once you're in it, you're like, oh yeah, that is about the level of work that I'm doing and the amount of hours. It's really fun when you're in it and you don't really realize, but keeping up with everything is really, really hard. And there are certain times where you have to pick your show over your classes or your classes over your show. That's a really hard balance to keep up with, especially when it starts getting around tech and towards the end of that rehearsal process. But it doesn't mean that it's not still incredibly rewarding and fun to be a part of. And as long as that passion doesn't die, you can figure out ways to keep that drive going too. So yeah, I think that's mostly my self-care kind of stuff that I do.
What are some dreams that you have for your career?
I have so many. I really, really, there are two big things that are like top goals to work on a show for Disney, like The Little Mermaid or Finding Nemo or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the other really big one is to do a European tour.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I would love to do a European tour.
That's like top of my list. The absolute thing that I want to do before I retire eventually
Mm-hmm.
is to do a European tour. I really just want to break into touring. That's my biggest goal. That's my biggest short-term goal, short-term-ish, like in the
Mm-hmm.
next 10 years to really break into that. Find a city to settle in for that rehearsal time, and then to be touring the rest of the year. Those are probably my biggest goals right now. And to just like make as many friends and contacts as possible.
Mm-hmm. Are there any shows besides, like you mentioned, wanting to do a Disney show? Are there any other shows, either plays or musicals, that you're dying to do?
I have quite a few plays. My specific BFA program, I wouldn't say play only. It's a mostly play program. Most of our shows that we do every semester are plays. We did our first musical in 4 or 5 years last year, and it was cabaret. But we don't do musicals very often. We actually just started our musical theater program, so I know a lot more plays than I do musicals at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to do my favorite play of all time. It's called Cabo San Lucas. I would love to be a part of. This is such a cliche answer at this point after the past few years, but I would love to be a part of Hamilton.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, I would really love to do that. I love shows like Dear Evan Hansen. I really like shows that break the mold and push boundaries. Oh, I really love SpongeBob the musical for this, and that sounds so ridiculous, but SpongeBob the musical and Hamilton are two of the only shows right now that they have a flawlessly diverse cast and crew,
Hmm.
that they didn't purposefully do that really, but they sought to do it with purpose, but did not purposefully pick people for the specific roles that they were in because of the color of their skin. That is beyond important to me. I really would like to work in for regional theaters if I can, who really support and want to push the mold on diversity and inclusion. That's my main goal, and that's what I really want to do.
The music for the Backstage Creative was improvised and performed by Ian Leroy, and the logo was designed by Zach Rimbold.